Hello there. Dr. Bill Crawford here, psychologist, speaker, author of 8 books, host of 2 PBS specials. Here again to bring you another tip on how to help you create the life you want. Specifically, how to use my life from the top of the mind philosophy to bring more clarity, confidence, creativity, and everything you do. Today I want to talk about arguments, especially kind of how they happen, why they happen. I call it the neuroscience of solution-focused conversations, which kind of talks about how arguments devolve into non-solution-focused conversations. And so there's a quote that I'm sending out to those 6,000 folks on my quote list. By the way, if you'd always like to be in that list, so that each week I send you one of my favorite quotes, along with 2 or 3 paragraphs about how to apply that quote to life. All you got to do is go to my website, billcrawfordphd.com, or just Google Bill Crawford. I'll come up on the first page. Hit the subscribe button, put your name and email address in, and each week I'll send you one of these quotes, along with 2 or 3 paragraphs about how to apply the quote to life, and a link to this week's video. So the quote is one of mine. It's kind of derived from another organization. It says, people generally don't get into arguments because they want to. Generally, an argument happens because there's not a process in place to drive engagement and solution-focused conversations. Process in place, not a process in place. There's a quote from Deming, the gentleman who did all the total quality stuff back in the 70s, 60s. He says, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you probably don't know what you're doing. And I think that's the case when we get into arguments. Again, we're not doing it on purpose. We don't want to do that. But it gets into this debate about who's right, and people's feelings get hurt, and they start kind of throwing little hand grenades back and forth. And all of a sudden, you're no longer talking about an issue. You're certainly not having a solution-focused conversation. It's devolved into an argument or a heated discussion that really doesn't solve anything. And again, because there's no process in place, but also because of how the brain works. This is the neuroscience of conflict resolution and the neuroscience of solution-focused conversations. Those of you who follow my life from the top of the mind philosophy, you know I break the brain down into 3 parts. Lower brain's called the brainstem. Upper 80% of the brain I call the top of the mind. This is where we have access to our clarity, confidence, creativity, compassion, interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, etc. The middle brain is the most interesting, however, because it is the scanner, processor, router part of the brain. It's the limbic system. People call it the emotional brain. I just call it the middle brain. What it does is it scans the environment for any signs of negative information. Because as long as we've been on the planet, the middle brain has kept us alive by worrying about bad things happening, being eaten in the jungle or thrown out of the village or whatever. And so it has a bias toward the negative. It pays more attention to negative information than it does positive. It also has a tendency to interpret negative information in a way that throws us into this lower brain and triggers our anger, frustration, stress, resentment, annoyance, which is actually driven by certain chemicals. So what is going on when a discussion starts off okay, but then devolves into a heated discussion or an argument is this middle brain is going, uh-oh, danger, watch out, throws us into this lower brain. And our interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, ability to create a solution-focused conversation does not reside in the lower brain. So in my system, the first thing I show people how to do is when we find ourselves triggered into that lower brain, feeling emotions that just don't serve us, they're not wrong or bad, they just don't help, then there's a model in the book and in my seminars that shows people how to shift from the lower brain to the top of the mind and actually begin to design who we want to be, how we want to be. So it's not just stopping stress or minimizing stress. It's really accessing the qualities of clarity, confidence, creativity, centered, kindness, in control, flexibility, productivity, influential, whatever it is that you want to be. And there's a process that does that. So there's a process. Then in the second part of the book, I say, okay, now we know how to get to the top of the mind. How do we stay there? How do we keep from continually falling back into the lower brain every time this middle brain misinterprets something or someone as negative, as dangerous? So I show people how to rewire the brain in a relatively short amount of time, create more neural pathways, since the brain is always rewiring itself. That's the neuroplasticity component. I show them how to rewire the brain by creating those neural pathways. Part 3 of the book is my system for creating engagement and solution-focused conversations. It has us taking 100% accountability, the ability to be counted upon, for the qualities and characteristics we are bringing to the conversation, so that we don't go into a conversation worried or stressed or anxious or frustrated. Or if we get worried or anxious or stressed or frustrated, we know that's the time to pause the conversation because we're in the lower brain. So we take accountability for the qualities we bring to the conversation at the very beginning. Then we want to get really clear about, okay, I'm talking to someone, who are they at their best? I'm not trying to stop their worst. I'm not trying to convince them of the righteousness of my perspective at this moment. I want to make sure I'm connecting with the best of who they are, because that's the solution-focused part of who they are. If they're part of my organization, do they do anything well? If they're part of my family, what do they love to do? What do they get excited about? I always want to hold an image of who they are at their best, so that I don't just focus on their worst or get into this argument about who's right. The next step are the listening and empathizing, and that's in every communication model you're ever going to find. But I tie it to a certain part of the brain. We listen and learn what part of the brain they're coming from, because if they're stuck in the lower brain, this is not the time to try to go to a solution. It's a time to really listen and learn what's important to them. So asking questions. Questions are the search engine for the brain. Once we kind of get what's important to them without judging it, go, yep, I can certainly see how you'd see it that way. I can see how that would be important to you. That's empathizing. And it doesn't take that long. It basically says you no longer have to convince me of the righteousness of your perspective. I'm not going to try to argue with you about whether you're right or wrong there. I can see how you'd see it that way. Then you ask what I call a solution-focused, top-of-the-mind question. A question about the solution and the future that blends what's important to you with what's important to them. That's why knowing what's important to them is going to be so important later in the model. But that's a process. Just imagine if everybody in your organization, your leadership team, went into a meeting saying, okay, here are the qualities or characteristics I'm going to bring to this meeting, and I'm going to take 100% responsibility for that. And I know I'm dealing with people who have good intentions, people who are good at what they do. I want to make sure I'm reaching for the best of who they are. I also want to understand what's important to these people, because until I understand it, I'm not going to be able to partner with it. And until I understand it and empathize with it, they're going to try to convince me of the righteousness of it. So that understanding, listen and learn and empathize. And then we want to begin to ask solution-focused questions. So given that this is important to you and important to me, how about in the future we try this? Number one, it's a future-based. It's a let's see how we can try, and it's combining what's important. Now, all of that is easier said than done, right? So there's a whole part of the book, about the last third of the book, devoted to that. So if this is something you feel would be good for your organization, your family, and you want my help in kind of helping people create this, all you got to do is go to my website, again, BillCrawfordPh.com, or just Google Bill Crawford, PhD, and hit the contact button. Let me know what you're interested in. Love to talk with you about that. In the meantime, I hope you're enjoying the videos. Please hit the like button if you do. Share it with your friends. You know how YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn all love it when you like it. So feel free to do that. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. So until next time, here's to you, bringing more clarity, confidence, creativity into your conversations and everything you do. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.